So Prop 1 just passed. It actually failed in 42 of the 58 counties and passed by only about 27,000 votes of 7.2 million statewide. It was a slim margin, and we were told definitively that this was going to pass overwhelmingly. You know, this has been the governor's solution. You know, this is something that he has touted. It's going to fix the homeless problem in our state. But similar to other ballot measures we've seen in the past, for example, Prop 47, that was marketed as the Safe Neighborhoods Act, and years later, what we see is just the opposite. It is responsible for much of the crime trends that we see throughout the state. So I think that's the concern here, that Prop 1 is going to have that same trailing effect, where it was marketed to voters as a solution, and instead it winds up contributing to the problem. California has already spent about $17.5 billion in the course of a couple of years on the issue of homelessness. And in that period of time, the numbers actually went up. So we estimate there's about 180,000 people experiencing homelessness in the state of California. I actually think that's an underestimate. The concern is that you have a state that has already spent the money on all of the things that they believe are going to effectuate change, and now Prop 1 was a bond measure, which means that it's a loan. So another $6.4 billion to do more of the same things that they have been doing, which we know are not working. And a lot of people are not aware that anyone can open a sober living or social rehabilitation detox, any group home facility in the state of California in residential neighborhoods. They are considered a home like any other, as long as there are 6 or fewer beds. So I'm a lawyer, you're a journalist. You know, we couldn't open a medical office, but we could open a group home. And when we did, there would be no requirement that we can demonstrate our ability to have positive outcomes for these individuals, or even that we can keep them safe and properly cared for. Now, with Prop 1, that will be expanded, and so these homes can go into any property zoned for multifamily, for retail, for office, for parking. There's nothing in the language of the proposition that limits the number of beds. That could be unlimited number of beds in one facility, it could be unlimited number of beds in one area, in one city. So I think that's the primary concern, is that we know that these methods aren't working, and we're going to see more of that. So what we hear from residents, of course, is just an uneasiness, unpredictability. We have zoning laws for a reason. We try to prevent inconsistent or incompatible uses from going next to each other. For example, you wouldn't put a manufacturing plant next to a school. And although in the eyes of the law, these homes are considered a home like any other, the reality is oftentimes that's just not what the neighbors experience. You have people dealing with deep trauma, working through a lot of different things. Many of them have nicotine habits as part of a coping mechanism. And so you've got that nuisance factor, and people congregating. You have neighbors who are uncomfortable letting their kids play, in the street, ride their bicycles or on their front lawn. So it does have an impact. And then, of course, the cities have the resources. We have to deal with increased calls for service, for overdoses, for noise complaints, for emergency response, all of the impacts that we have to absorb from a city's perspective. Certainly, there are plenty of good operators who have had some really great success stories and are getting people well. In Newport Beach, unfortunately, we did have a tragic incident a few years ago in one of these group homes in one of our neighborhoods, where an individual who was seeking care in one of these group homes left the facility in the middle of the night and broke into a neighboring home and awoke the two individuals that lived in that home. And as he made his way up the stairs towards the couple that lived there, he was telling them that he was looking for a knife to slay demons, and they were continuing to warn him, to not come any further. Unfortunately, he proceeded up the stairs, and the husband did shoot and ultimately kill him. He was a young man. He was 23 years old. His parents had sent him from the Midwest to California to get well, and there was obviously not proper oversight in the home, and he was allowed to leave, and of course, broke into a home, and the neighboring residents were well within their right, to protect themselves. And that neighborhood, of course, has never been the same. I mean, how could it be after that? So that's obviously an extreme circumstance. Again, the justification for these homes being allowed in residential zones is that they should be able to get well in an environment that is the same as any other residence, rather than an institutional setting. This is a protected class in the eyes of the law, so you can't discriminate. For a home for individuals who are in recovery, you have to treat that home like any other in any neighborhood. What we find is that they tend to over-concentrate in certain neighborhoods, and so what you wind up with is a community, a neighborhood, a cul-de-sac that have more of these homes than other homes, and so it becomes an institutional setting, and it transforms that neighborhood. Most of the operators will open a home for 6 or fewer residents. Some of them will then open additional homes in the area that also have 6 or fewer beds. It's referred to as an integral facility, and they'll share resources across those homes. So residents will go from one home to another for group therapy, for example, or other appointments. And then during the day, if they're not engaged in some activity with the home and the schedule that is being provided by the operator, obviously they are free to congregate, as I mentioned, socialize, go to the beach, go out and enjoy the community. But so what we generally tend to hear from residents is the nighttime congregation, the smoking, just loitering, whether it's in front of the home or some outdoor portion of the home that where noise can carry over, or neighboring parks, things like that. What we often see, especially in California, is that people are coming from outside of the area, outside of the state. It's very appealing, especially for parents who are desperate, to have their young adults or any age child to get well, to get sober in sunny California. What can happen is someone is intended to stay for, let's say, a 30-day period, and then either they violate the rules of the home, let's say they're caught using and they're supposed to be clean and sober. Well, now they're kicked out of the home and potentially they have nowhere to go, or they're too far from home to get there, and those measures are not taken into consideration. They're supposed to return someone back to where they came from, but we often don't see that happening. So the other part is benefits. Obamacare allowed for parity for mental health coverage. So insurance companies have to have benefits for mental health services just like they would any other healthcare coverage. So the result is these insurance companies are responsible for, in many cases, some or all of these group home visits. But then when those benefits run out, if the person needs more care but they can't pay for it, they can also be kicked out of the home. So it's another concern for Prop 1 if we're going to have more of these facilities and they're going to go into communities, with no thought given to greater care. Is it actually going to make the problem worse instead of better?
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we are building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.